How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Freddy's Nightmares. This is Season 1, Episode 4, and this one's entitled Freddy's Tricks and Treats. The episode originally aired October 30th, 1988, so the day before Halloween. And this was directed by Ken Wiederhorn, who is the same guy that directed Return of the Living Dead Part 2. The episode stars Mariska Hargitary, Darren Dalton, Daniel McDonald, Cameron Thorne, and of course Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, our host. However, he's not just the host this time around. We're in the second Freddy Krueger episode. I guess it makes sense. Halloween's a big day for the show. Let's roll out Freddy himself. And that really does help the episode. Having more Robert Englund's always a good thing. Actually getting to go to the boiler room. And the episode is about a guy trying to record someone's dreams. So it makes more sense to be an episode of this series. And overall, I found this to be one of the better ones so far, and it came out pretty well. I think a big problem with this series is two parts. One, it can quite often be theming instead of plot. Like, we'll do something like, in this case, we'll do a random morgue episode, but rather than telling a story about a morgue, we're just going to have random dream hallucination stuff inside of a morgue. And two, being two stories, I like that they are connected, but I'd much rather have them work together and tell something bigger, actually use all that runtime that they have, and I feel like this episode solves a lot of that. The random scare sequences without much plot are primarily in the first half, but this episode actually has a really strong connection between the first and the second half, and even though the first half is relatively unfocused, the second half being that study about dreams, it makes the first half seem like just, an atmospheric setup piece. And the second half being about recording dreams, not only does it make it more Nightmare on Elm Street, it also makes the scares feel more in line with the story, which is really, really good. For real though, halfway through the episode, the focus does change, but it still very much is one bigger, longer story, and I definitely appreciate that. Again though, it isn't perfect. The first half is a little meandery, and the big sin here is this pitches as a Halloween episode, but she so quickly leaves that Halloween party that it's barely a Halloween story. Yeah, I wish we had more of the Halloween element in here, but whatever, I still say this is one of the better ones. It's a Freddy Krueger story. I'd say it's worth watching, even though bear in mind it's not perfect. I am going to have gripes in just a second. Still though, I think this is the best one so far, and I'm hoping we'll get a positive direction in this series. All that being said though, in order to analyze the episode better, I do want to start talking a bit about the plot. I'll try to avoid major spoilers and I'll try not to ruin anything big, but from here on out I want to do a breakdown and analysis, so let's go ahead and take a deeper dive. We open up in the first half of this episode with a girl wanting to study in her sorority house and ignore the party going on downstairs. Her boyfriend goes and interrupts her, and quite hilariously, he's wearing a knockoff Jason Voorhees mask well before Freddy vs. Jason would happen. A fun little inside joke from the producers. She'll eventually decide to leave the party and head back to the university to study in peace, and as she's exiting the party, we hear a guy talking about how he has an experiment to record people's dreams. Gee, I wonder what the second section of this episode will be about. We're not gonna leave a plot element this big dangling, are we? Well, she goes to the university's morgue and decides to do a little bit of studying on a cadaver. And by the way, I was never a medical student, obviously. Do they just give you all the cadavers you want to cut up? It seems a little odd she can just go down there and start cutting into this guy. I'm like, those have got to be expensive, right? And they only have so many? Medical students, do they just let you carve into a cadaver whenever you want, late at night on Halloween? Halloween? Probably not. Well, when she goes in, she talks to the security guard, and they talk about Halloween and everyone taking it so important, and the security guard says that's because Springwood has a very famous ghost, Freddy Krueger, and I kind of wonder if the security guard mentioning this puts it in her head and that's why Freddy shows up, because she was thinking about him and that pulled him into the dream. I don't know, maybe I'm just reading into this. She naturally dozes off while studying, which, gee, yeah, I don't think dozing during a dissection is a good idea, but whatever, she'll get some fun little sequences there. Freddy Krueger will take over one of those anatomy skeletons. They'll do a few gags with the corpses, and yeah, saying the episode's going to be a Halloween episode, and then really having it be a morgue episode, and just doing random shenanigans, that's about on par for what the show has been up to lately. I do wish we had more focus. Talk about focus, what's the girl's trauma? Well, she has a dream about her grandmother that raised her, and her grandmother is, get this, another clone of Carrie's mom. Oh gosh, I'm sick of this trope. But whatever. She apparently was out with a boy and the grandmother's going to make her scrub her skin. I'm guessing the idea is here that she has sexual repression and that's why she wants to study so hard as a way of avoiding the party culture. Now that being said, the way her backstory is integrated isn't the best. We have Freddy Krueger and Grandma here, and when Nightmare works the best, you can see Freddy Krueger using people's insecurities and working as a metaphor for them, but here it kind of just seems like Freddy Krueger and Grandma are kind of fighting for the spotlight, and it seems like the two are completely different things rather than working with each other as they should be, and then the whole, oh, it's sexual repression, but we're barely going to touch on that. I mean, like, that's a big character plot point. It really should have much more weight on the episode, but it's just kind of thrown out there casually and barely touched. Oh well. Like I said, this first half is the randomness that Freddy's Nightmares is starting to be known for to me, and I won't spoil it, but boy is the ending out of the blue, and I'm like, okay, why did we decide to do that? But whatever, we move into the second part, and the second part is much more organized. After the events of the first, she decides to go to that dream recording guy, and he talks about how not only is recording someone's dreams a big technical scientific breakthrough, but one of the possible applications is to see what you're dreaming about there on the videotape and confront your issues more directly. It could be a form of therapy. And we see her dream, and she decides to start stripping in her bedroom for the researchers watching her outside. Yeah, that's a little on the nose. We can tell we're trying to keep that viewership levels up, but for real, teenage boys in the 80s, this is public TV. They're not gonna show anything. So of course the video cuts out right then and there, and I will say one of the weaker parts about the second half is he keeps going, my technology is not good enough. What, because it is a little staticky sometimes and it cuts in and out? Dude, you should see what we have in real life now. Researchers are actually working on pulling images out of the human brain, and they'll do things like get this really fuzzy image that kind of resembles what they showed the test subject, and that makes all the news headlines and gets shown on all these websites. What you have now is not one blurry image, but legitimate seconds of VHS quality video. It's way better than we have now and would make you a millionaire, but no, it's not good enough for the sake of the story. Of course we get these bits where it's like, is he pushing her too hard? She does legitimately want the therapy, but you do have to wonder why the guy's doing all this. And on top of pushing her too hard, when they realize she's thinking about Freddy, what if we try to focus on Freddy? And then we'll of course get sequences in his boiler room, which is really cool. I like finding Freddy there and pursuing him. And the over-the-top random dream sequence gags, again, make more sense when we're actually doing a story about dreams. So in turn, yeah, the random first half really does feel like a setup for the second. Things like sexual repression, Halloween, and grandma are not fully realized. And the first half is a very standard Freddy's Nightmare episode, but I love that the second half is a direct continuation. I love that Freddy's actually here, and I love that by the end we're telling one focused story. Overall though, I have to say Freddy's Tricks and Treats is so far my favorite episode of the series. Here's hoping that this is a positive direction for the show. I would love to see more like this one. But as I said previously in the series, these are pretty much all fresh watches for me. I really don't know what the future holds, so here's to the next episode being good, I hope. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Freddy's Nightmares playlist where you can see me talk about the past episodes of this show. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Playlist here. Have a good day now.